Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, licensed presenters, the Core Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. Three titles today: a quote from Joe's book, Contrology Develops the Body Uniformly, the number 2 thing in the presentation. And then my second thing is talking about misrepresentations or distortions. A couple of examples of that from the MMP point of view. And then number 3 is KWYK, which stands for Know What You Know. So in the first one, the quote from Joe, the second thing to know out of 5 as a presenter, 3 from Joe, 2 from me. The 3 from Joe are in this book. The 2 from me are a definition of this way of engaging your muscles and pointing out that that's the way the body engages itself to move through space. And the second thing is an ideal point of view of Pilates that comes from a theory that Pilates has an essence of its own and gets to a point of view that Pilates is an experience. So, this number 2, that Contrology develops the body uniformly, is a fundamental part of the MMP point of view. Because in the MMP point of view, it acknowledges the fact of the matter that the body engages itself in core new tension, and it's from that engagement that you get to developing the body uniformly. So number 1 was about where does this whole thing about uniform come from, and why does MMP make such a big deal out of that, is because there's a consistency within Joe's original work, his pictures, his words, and his film. That doesn't have in it some images of people on Pilates equipment. What am I trying to say? I brought a pen. Let's see how well I see how good I do this. So here's a reformer with a carriage and a shoulder rest. Okay? That makes sense to you? And then there's I screwed that up a little bit. But there's a body on the reformer, prone, hands on the foot bar, feet up on the shoulder rest, in this grand extension. Okay? and this itty bitty angle here. A deep crease at the hips. Oh, come on now, I have there it is. So, by crease I mean that kind of a thing, a crease. And in that crease, what happens to your ability to evenly distribute the tension, the load, the pressure in the hose, the hydraulic nature of the effort diminishes when you create a crimp in the hose. Nowhere that I know of in Joe's original work do you see this effort, this expression of a deep crease at the hips. And maybe there's one that I don't know about. Please point it out to me and the original work in itself. This deep crease makes a movement like in yoga, I think, called the needle, where you just try to stand on one leg, put your chest on the thigh of your supporting leg, and point your other leg straight up in the air. But this sort of works out as a triangle that has this beautiful line of extension in it. I'm not knocking the fact that this is a beautiful image, but that in the image is a tight angle at the hips. To the extent that you go into that, you diminish your capacity in being uniformly engaged. So I think that's why you don't see any of that in Joe's original work. And that as much as it's easy to get into that, both in your own body and in the visual appeal of it, it's a misrepresentation, I think, of the idea of contrology develops the body uniformly, because it's an expression in the body that sacrifices uniformly developing the body for the sake of the engagement. So, why does that matter? Because if you're after uniform usage of your body, and you stay with the way the exercises that are done on the reformer that involve an arabesque, it's also easy to roll the hip out and go into extension to go there. But the whole nature of Pilates is to go closer to the center in order to come further out from there. And so I would take someone down into square hips. I'm going to mess this up, I'm sure. But instead of extension from hips to shoulders, in the effort to seek uniform engagement over range of flexion in the hip, I would say that you're trying to maintain flexion from hip to shoulders in order to maximize your ability to be uniformly engaged. Now, making pretty silhouettes on Pilates equipment is fine and dramatic, but knowing the distinction between what you're doing and why that really isn't mirrored in Joe's original work In the MMP POV, when you go into that much of a deep flexion, a deep crease at the hips, you sacrifice too much of your capacity to be uniformly engaged. So maintaining flexion from hips to shoulders is more within the intent of the movement because it plays toward more uniform engagement. Know what you know. Well, if I don't, okay, one other thing, okay? I felt I came to a good conclusion on that one. How about on the Cadillac, with the push-through bar, which is a solid bar, piece of wood, right? And the performer, oh, I'm going to mess this up. Goes into this big extension while holding on to the push-through bar. That's what it's called. And yet I think it's appropriate to describe this as a pull back. So the pull back on the push-through bar is what I'm talking about, as a common expression of Pilates, because it's dramatic and it films well, it's visually appealing. If this is your spine, and from your shoulders are connected to a rigid, there's no give in that. There's no give in that. So it's a dead reach right back to the shoulders. A grip at your hands, and that then you push through your feet to go up into an extension, and so you have gravity working on you, of course, and this whole thing is compressive by its very engagement. There's no out into the springs. There's using a contraption or a setup to challenge the control of a situation in disadvantageous circumstances. Because if you lose control, or when you lose control, the whole weight of the effort sinks upon itself, and the compression if you're using equipment, a lot of it is out into tension. That's variable, and when what? You reach your limit or lose control or give up or it's time to come in from going out, it's a safe return of yourself to stasis, to rest. So my closing is something about developing the body uniformly. Oh, which was my beginning, right? Contrology develops the body uniformly. Recognize engagements that recognize efforts or movements or positions in the body that diminish the objectives that you're after. Now, this great, beautiful picture, if you're after a great, beautiful picture, it is. But if I were instructor to that, I would say, okay, that's very nice. Now create flexion between your hips, the shoulders, and your ears. Create 3 points on a line in flexion while you change at the hip into extension. And maintain the plane of the hips. Not because there isn't all that range when you open up your hip and reach out, but that has less to do with how close to core you are and how much control you have, and the objective of doing Pilates as being one of in pursuit of control. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Connect the dots. Evaluate points of view. Evaluate knowledge and what it's based on. I would want you to evaluate or be aware of the knowledge based in word of mouth versus knowledge based in theory. I think you have to be looking for a distinction to find one. What matters is if you are looking for distinction, or you are looking for more control in your Pilates practice and how you see it is what you're doing, the more you understand what makes it what it is and what you're after and what you're doing, that I'm sure you already have great sense of already. But if there actually has to be an explanation, it would be better that you were familiar with it than not. And to whatever level you want to expose yourself to. Evaluate points of view. Direct your thinking. Geist.